Hello and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm Classical. I'm Trey, and I'm joined by someone who is how would I describe my co-host?
Hmm.
Hmm. I'm also going to say classical in the best ways.
Thank you.
Emily.
I'm eclectically classical.
Wait, what?
Eclectically classical. It's hard to say. Say it
I was
times
going to say
five times fast.
no, thank you, but I appreciate it. That'll be a TikTok trend. But
Oh yeah, we'll make a TikTok video of that later.
right. How's your week been, Emily?
It's been great. We're up in Minnesota, so the Canadian wildfires are affecting us right now. But it
Oh,
rained a little bit, which cleared the air some, and that made it nice. So, and we need the rain, so this is good.
that's
Yay,
awesome.
garden.
Yay.
Yeah.
What do you have growing in your garden right now?
Oh gosh, 5 different kinds of tomatoes, beets, a little bit of corn, peppers, 4 kinds of peppers, um, cucumbers, which I probably have to replant because I don't think they're gonna make it,
Oh no.
and some green beans that are actually purple
Okay.
because I'm into
Um,
that.
let's talk after the podcast because I am in need of some good quality vegetables, and I'd be willing to pay for some organically grown vegetables from the Modern Romantic Garden.
Oh yeah, I'll ship them to you. It'll be great. Oh, and Josh said onions and rhubarb, and that is also correct.
Ooh, thanks, Josh.
Red onions and rhubarb. Yes, I'm so excited.
Awesome. um, my week has also been pretty good. I've gotten into some retro viewing. I really got into the Japanese series Super Sentai and started watching some of their older broadcasts.
Okay.
So got really into their Die Ranger series, um, which would have been the second series of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but that is a whole diatribe I'm not going to get on right now. The diatribe I am going to get on is introducing our guest today. So, Emily, would you please introduce our fantastic guest today?
Yes. First, real quick, I just want to shout out the Fairy Tale magazine because I forgot to mention this as something that's happened recently, and that was I have a poem that was published in their most recent edition, Briar and Thorn. So thank
Congratulations!
you. It's was something I wasn't sure I wanted to share with everyone, but I definitely decided I'm going to. So, you can go to the Fairy Tale magazine online and you can read the entire edition for free. It's called Briar and Thorn. So, anyway, back to our guest. Tonight we're joined by saxophonist Nick May, a world traveling performer known for his bold sound, fresh style, and deep passion for music. Welcome to the podcast.
Yay!
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here tonight.
Thank you for being here. And actually, you're not just a saxophonist. You have a cool new title.
So as of about a couple of months ago, I'm now the artistic director for Kansas City Young Chamber Musicians, which is a nonprofit, obviously in Kansas City, that actually promotes and fosters chamber music in high school age and younger children, where they get weekly coachings and performance opportunities, and it's a really unique experience and opportunity for them that a lot of children around the country and especially in the metro they don't get. And so we coordinate that and we make it happen.
Cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I ask how
Yeah.
many students you have going through the that program now?
Right now, so KCYCM has been in existence for about, I think, the last five years or so. Nicholas Dold was the former director and artistic director before he had to uh, move to Michigan for all good reasons, but he trusted Maya Tuliva and I with the baby. And so I think in the past it's been capped around 10 to 15, just smaller chamber groups, piano trios, a couple string quartets. But with this spring, we're about 20, 25, depending on how you count the numbers, because some kids double dip in different ensembles. And it's actually the largest enrollment we've had, actually, the program has had. And we have actually, there's a woodwind quintet that's never happened before with the program. Obviously, I'm biased, and I made sure the first thing to make sure a saxophone quartet happened. Um, but we have 3 piano trios, a string duo, and it's already, like, we're actually having our final performance this coming Thursday, not even July, June 11th, and it's amazing.
That's incredible. And I mean, priorities first, saxophone, and then everybody else.
I mean, it does help that I had a studio full of students that said, hey kids, you want to play in a quartet? And they all said yes, and it was convenient, but but after that, I mean, the chamber music, and that is one of my loves, and I think even with my teaching, that's something, especially my students. I think saxophone students or wind students don't get often until they're at the collegiate level. Normally, like if they're in, like wind ensemble or band, they might split up to like woodwinds or brass, but they rarely get like the core chamber ensembles that branch out into the bigger kind of chamber repertoire. So, after obviously shameless plug, like I got the saxophone quartet going. The next one was like, okay, I want to get a woodwind quintet going, and then we were working on a brass quintet, but that didn't happen this spring. But I'm adamant on making it happen actually in the fall, and obviously the big three, the piano trio, string quartets, and those piano duos. But I think also in the fall, what we're looking to add is actually, incorporating like a jazz combo in a sense, because I would make the argument that is very much as much of a chamber ensemble, but maybe not in a classical sense, but it's still just as interactive and still in core, what a chamber ensemble is. It's just a different medium.
I would agree with that. Like there is so much theory behind jazz, just as much as there is from a chamber ensemble. People think it's just improvisation, but there's a lot more that goes into it that you have to know before you go into it.
Exactly. And like even with that, how do you transform like a jazz, something from like a jazz combo, piano, drums, bass, guitar, and saxophone or trumpet or whatever your acoustic instrument is? How do you transform that into an actual ensemble versus 4 or 5 people all playing the same thing at the same time? Like there's just as much communication, especially with the improvisation and just the dialogue within the ensemble, that I think a lot of people kind of skip that step when they actually play in a combo. They just go straight to playing tunes and improvising, and it's more about the improvisation, not the collective.
That's really interesting. I've never really thought about it. Every time that
See,
I've joined,
case in point, and that's what we want to offer. And so I'm talking with different coaches in Kansas City, different instructors who are amazing educators and performers, and they're going to be treating it in that medium where, I think what we're discussing right now is kind of having 2 sessions with that, where one covers like the harmonic, the kind of theory side of stuff, and then how do you apply that in an actual artistic way, and have that go out throughout the whole spring and fall and spring semester. It's about 15 weeks each.
Wow. So you're not busy, not at all.
oh no, and this is just one of the like 50 million hats I wear like on a daily basis. It's normal.
You've got a big hat room.
Oh, there's a whole closet.
Well, Nick, I want to back up for a second, because we know that you've accomplished a lot of great things, and I want to touch on that. But something that even I don't know, and for our listening audience, Nick and I actually went to college together, but I don't think we ever talked about like where and how you got started with music. And so my biggest question for you is, what was it about music and then eventually the saxophone that made it your calling?
Well, I know we're on the mostly romantic podcast, and I know, you want this beautiful romantic, dialogue of how saxophone, how I fell in love with it. But I don't really have that romantic story with it, at least from the beginning. It might have developed later, but so, I mean, I grew up in Nebraska, just outside of Lincoln, and
Okay.
started playing in 5th grade. And really, when they had the instrumental petting zoo day, I think it was like you got to pick 3 instruments you got to try. And so I wanted to play trumpet, French horn, and saxophone. And I couldn't make a noise out of 2 or 3. And so they were just like, well, you can make a sound on saxophone. Congratulations, you've now played saxophone.
Okay.
What a way to do that.
So, I mean, that was pretty much how that happened. And at that point in my life, like band was fun and music was fun, but was never like the end goal career that I thought I never like grew up saying like thinking I wanted to be that, you know what I mean? And so about middle school, late middle school, like ninth grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, um, you know, shocker, I was last chair because shocker, I didn't practice, you know, and so obviously you're not going to do well if you don't practice. We learned that lesson now, but you know, there was the solo ensemble contest, you know, at the spring that every year has. And so I was going to do a solo because everyone did a solo because that's just what you did. And I remember like the older senior basically like came up to me like one day in the middle of band after band and was basically said to me, why are you doing that? Because you're going to get like a 3 or a 4 or whatever the, you know, basically you played really awful, but we have to give you a you know, a participation trophy because you tried. So why are you wasting everyone's time doing that? And I was like, wow. Granted, at that point I was, you know, a lot more reserved than the vocabulary I have now. But at that point I was like, you know what? You don't tell me what I do and what I can't do. And I actually did this weird thing called practicing. And lo and behold, I got a 1 and like one of the best, you know, scores of the ensemble side, and it was like the fancy like prestigious award. And I was like, huh, weird. That's why. And so then it was kind of I mean, at that point, you know, it was more of like the kind of the instant gratification of, oh, I get, you know, I mean, we all like, you know, doing well and getting the first places and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No one's going to complain about that. And especially when you're, you know, middle school, high school boy, you know, you're very instant gratification driven, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but even at that point, like I still wasn't really considering music as a career. I wanted to actually go into, of all things, anesthesiology, which is hilarious me now because I don't want to do anything medically related. I do not want to be in charge of anyone's like life or death kind of situation. And I just laugh at the fact that there one point, one version of me thought I would be totally okay with that. Whatever. Also would have had a nice paycheck to go with it. But again, that was a former me. But I remember if we fast forward to like 11th, yeah, it was like my 11th, like I think my junior year in high school. We where I went to high school in Lincoln Southwest, they at the time, I think, I don't know if they do it still or not, but they were actually the rehearsal space for the Lincoln Symphony. So they would always do their weekly rehearsals there in our auditorium or in our band room. And so, I mean, I could probably find the date, you know, if I actually like went back and tried to find it, because it was their dress rehearsal for their like whatever their fall performance was. And they were doing Rhapsody in Blue, and they were doing Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, which I remember these to the like specifically because our director obviously played in the ensemble, and for whatever reason he invited everyone in band to come to rehearsal. You know, we're doing a sound check, dress rehearsals. You know, as long as you're not like being rowdy, you can sit in the front or back of the band room and just listen to what professionals do. You know, do your homework, just enjoy the music. And so I was maybe one of like 3 or 4 people that actually showed up and was going to do their homework. And I remember they started with Rhapsody in Blue, which, you know, that's cool. But I was like, okay, cool. Like we've all heard this. And then, yeah, because I remember I was like, oh yeah, this is the Disney thing from Fantasia, 2000. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I know this. That's cool. Yeah, they're doing it live. Oh, cool. And then they did they rehearsed that for a bit, and they did their break. And then I'll never forget this. They got back from break tuned, and then they just literally ran Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. But that was almost, you know, this is where you get your kind of modern romantic kind of moment, is because sitting less than 5 feet away from an orchestra and just having that sound literally blast you all over your butt, like just like the sound waves from that. I don't know and I was effectively a farm boy from Nebraska. I didn't know, the only Tchaikovsky I knew was 1812 Overture and the Nutcracker, if that counts. But like hearing that for the first time live, that close, that was just like the goosebumps moment, and it was like, oh wow, that's what like professional music can do, if that makes sense. Like I'm trying to like recall the thoughts of like a 16-year-old, you know and translate it into something poetic, but it was just the most amazing thing that I've ever like seen or
Yeah.
heard or whatever in my life. I was like, whatever that is, I want it. I want to chase whatever that is. um and so that kind of, I think that is the like one of the pivotal moments that actually changed the trajectory of, okay, music's fun, to no, music is like absolutely serious, and that's what I want to do.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How funny that were kind of thrown into the saxophone and then had this moment of being blown away by
Yeah. Well,
music in a way that you
yeah.
hadn't before, to where like, and where you are now. That to me is
Yeah.
pretty incredible, that you took something you were thrown into and made something amazing out of it. Because it did touch you eventually. It
Oh,
did speak to you.
yeah. And I mean, I think the ironic part of the ironic part of the whole story, and just a lot of this, is obviously being a saxophonist and being like, having this life-changing moment in front of a Tchaikovsky symphony, and I'm never going to play one. Like, that is like the truly like ironic thing, is I am never going to play in an orchestra playing Tchaikovsky,
Oh, I guess
because there's
so.
no orchestral Tchaikovsky saxophone. I'll play Rhapsody in Blue
Oh.
though. I get Rhapsody in Blue though, so I get, but
Yeah, you could always do a transcription of a Tchaikovsky piece.
yeah, I mean, one, people have done that before, where they do that in like saxophone ensembles, and um, I did at one point actually technically play a movement of the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, but that was a bastardization on my end, and I will admit it. um, I mean, I almost actually, I mean, it's kind of ironic, actually, of you bringing up like Tchaikovsky and all that, because post grad school, if we fast forward a lot, I ended up actually studying a lot of clarinet, just because, um, like, I took lessons that whole time as well, like applied lessons, because usually my mo, and it's just kind of smart as like a modern contemporary artist, is the chances of you being a saxophonist and only playing saxophone is very, very, very little. And so I knew I'd be playing pit gigs, and probably musical like pit gigs, and you know um, any other kind of work. And so I was like, okay, well, I at least can play clarinet, and I'm going to study it, and at least get at least where I'm not like embarrassing myself when I play it. Flute, I still embarrass myself when I play it. Clarinet, I can. I like to think I would get into all state high school, and I can live with that, and I'm okay with that. Um, but after grad school, I was actually playing a lot more clarinet than I was saxophone, just because there was a lot of, coincidentally or not, I was actually playing on a lot of like pit, like musical pits around Kansas City, and a lot of them were like the heavy orchestral ones. Like, I was doing a lot of sound, like there was like a lot of Soundheim shows back to back, that
Yeah.
were actually clarinet and also A clarinet and E flat clarinet, um, no saxophone. And then I actually ended up playing in one of the like the civic orchestra on clarinet, of all things. And the final concert, actually, the final concert in right before COVID hit, had it happened, we would have been playing a Tchaikovsky symphony and like a Beethoven symphony. And I was about to commit to buying a whole new set of clarinets for that, because that was kind of my, like, okay, if I'm going to be playing the real stuff, I'm going to actually treat this seriously. Not that I wasn't serious, but like take it to the next level. And then obviously lockdown happened, and then I sold my clarinet.
I mean, I was about to ask, do we need to update the intro to say saxophonist and clarinetist?
Nope, nope. There is no like I don't even own one. I actually like
Wow.
sold and gave away all my like clarinet equipment and mouthpieces. Like, so it's only saxophone. Finally, after, yeah, I don't even know how long it's been.
That's
He went
fine.
all in.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I'm glad that you found your way into music, and that I'm glad that you took a step and you recognized what that forward momentum kind of looked like. You've mentioned jazz, both from a classical standpoint, but also from a chamber standpoint. Sorry, those are the same thing. From You've mentioned it kind of on both spectrums, jazz both appearing here as well as on the other side of the spectrum. And I feel like the saxophone in particular gets a bad rap of people think of it only being part of jazz, but it can exist in so many cross genre spaces. Do you find yourself kind of still having to fight that battle of no, this is a chamber instrument? And if so, how do you go about navigating that conversation?
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's no, I mean that's a really like loaded question. I mean, so usually most, I would say with like the generic, I would say music colleagues, I feel like most people in this day and age recognize, they may not accept it, but they at least recognize the saxophone is also has its place in the jazz, in a jazz idiom and also a classical idiom,
Mhm.
right? But you know, when talking to, because I would like colleagues if I'm out just at dinner or meet someone at happy hour or something, like, oh, what do you do? I work for a bank savings brokerage. I don't know. What do you do? Oh, I'm a classical saxophonist. So like, what, the math doesn't math. So like, tell me more. And so usually what I you know usually what I how I describe that is, I don't even say classical. I just say I'm a saxophonist, and typically what I do is mostly classical, or it's not as much improvisation these days. But when they ask like, what music do you play? Like, do you play jazz? Do you do this? It's, of course I play jazz. Like, you still have to be able to wear all those hats at any given point.
Yeah.
So it's just like, for example, like literally the other night on Friday night, like literally on Friday, or sorry, Saturday, like 3 days ago, I started off playing, just at a church service that morning, doing like, beautiful Baroque kind of just what you would imagine from a classical, just classical kind of church music. And then in the evening, I was literally playing for a private party with an EDM like DJ.
That's
Dead
incredible.
serious. But it's like,
That's awesome.
so
That's amazing.
do I do that every night? No, but like, like once a quarter, like, and then obviously I do my own concerts. But even when I do mine, I was actually kind of talking about this earlier with a colleague. What I normally do, because I do a lot of like contemporary music, and that's going to a contemporary, hour and a half contemporary saxophone concert, that could be opening up a pretty big can of worms, and you don't know what you're getting into.
Hmm.
We've all been there. We all know exactly what could happen, and that in the wrong hands, that could be a experience. Um, but I still do the avant-garde and that kind of stuff, but I don't come out guns a-blazing with that. More often than not, I'll actually start with, one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me was, start with what the audience and what the people know, and then go from there. And so
Hmm.
when people think
Yeah.
saxophone, they know jazz. And so 9 out of 10 times, I will start with just a nice, happy jazz, some sort of jazz-based piece, because that meets everyone's expectations. Everyone is happy. They are fully content. And once they meet that, then they can go on a journey with you. Or they're, at least from like a listener perspective, you have their trust.
Because you built that rapport. You've taken the time to kind of meet them where what
Yeah.
knowledge they already know,
Yeah.
and then you start
So
exposing them to something new.
exactly. Otherwise, if you start with like, the Stockhausen and the, open up, that, uh, you know, just very, what's the word I'm looking for? Intense music that unless you're specifically in that circle, it's a pretty harsh awakening coming from just driving to a concert, listening to, Taylor Swift or something, or Wicked, or whatever. Right? You have to warm them up just as much. You have to warm up your audience just as much as you warm up yourself when you're performing.
It's like going into a performance of The Rite of Spring. If you don't know what's about to happen, you might be a little turned off by it.
You might. You were thinking of, this was going to be sunflowers and butterflies and rainbows, and newsflash, it takes a hard left turn real quick. if you're not expecting it. If you're expecting it, then it fits every expectation. But for the average, music listener who probably doesn't know The Rite of Spring, then yeah, takes a hard left turn real quick.
For our listening audience, if you're not familiar with The Rite of Spring, please go look it up on YouTube after you finish this episode. But to kind of explain it, I like to describe it as the Dante's Inferno of music. So if you could just encapsulate Dante's Inferno into an overture, that's kind of what The Rite of Spring is.
One thing that you both mentioned that I just want to clarify for our listening audience, for those who may not know, because not all of us are as into the classical music scene. And I don't want to, abandon our audience with this one, but I would like to hear between the both of you somehow, your definition of the difference between classical music and chamber music.
So I will make the argument that chamber music actually isn't genre specific.
Okay.
Chamber music, by definition is more or less when, I would say an intimate amount of people are together creating music together. So if that's, typically most people consider chamber music duos to quintets or septets, maybe, so it's 2 to 7 people.
Okay.
After that, you kind of cross into like, okay, is a chamber orchestra with like 13 or 14 people? Is that chamber music, or are they just those lines get a little messy? But
so is it about the number of people?
It's about them. Yeah, I think it's more about the amount of people collaborating versus the versus the genre.
Okay.
Because like when the term chamber music, it actually comes back from, it comes from like the mid 19th century, where typically when like the Beethovens and the Brahms and all of the, all those people, composers were doing their concerts, a lot of their chamber music for like string quartets or like their piano trios or those kind of pieces, they were always played in like people's homes, or often played in people's homes, in their foyers, in their living rooms, because that's, that was very much kind of the scene at that, in those kind of circles. And so that kind of term stuck, where, it's not, if it could fit inside someone's living room or a very large living room of a mansion, it's that's kind of where the term chamber music gets its name from.
Sure. Wonderful.
But yeah, no, I would make the argument, but like, jazz is, a combo, jazz quintet, that's chamber music in its own way. Even a rock band technically is chamber music, because they are so intimately interacting with each other.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up, because it sounded like it was being referenced as a genre, and I could see a lot of people not understanding that. So thank you. Trey, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with everything that Nick said.
Okay. We'll save that soundbite for you, Nick.
Yeah, no, I need that. Like, save that, put that on a GIF, make that a meme. Like, I just need that saved for like, if I'm ever having a bad day, I just need to click the button and I need that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm writing down the timestamp on that moment.
Just add it to your next concert. Trey, do you have anything to add? No, I agree with everything that Nick said.
Yep.
It's the first and last time I'll ever hear that ever again. It's great.
That is such a lie. So flipping the script a little bit, we've talked a little bit about some of the things that you play for other people. I'm kind of curious, when you go home and you still want to play something, whether you have people sitting in your salon or your parlor or whatever, what's something that you just like to play for yourself?
Well, no, that's a weird. So, yeah, no, that's a weird question that I've actually like someone actually asked me that like the other week. Um, and the reason why it's weird for me is because I've almost gotten to a point where it's not necessarily work, but like when I get home from like a long day of rehearsal or teaching, whatever, like I almost like lock it in my room and like I actually like take a break from it. So I do get space and time from it.
Hmm.
Um, but if I'm home practicing, more often than not, obviously I live in suburbs. I'll open windows, assuming it's not like a million degrees outside. Um, but like I really like, I don't know, I'll just do like fun stuff. Like I'll just, pull out etudes that I worked on when I was like a little kid or, young adult and play through that. I'll do, sometimes I haven't done this in years, but like if the mood strikes and it's, I have this weird thing called free time. Um, I'll just start like doing, I haven't had this actually in ages, but I'll actually start like improvising kind of just random stuff, and I'll either start like writing, little mini uh saxophone solos or just like little ideas that like I might save for later because like I've thought about writing a technique book, and so I
Hmm.
just kind of just just write down these little like fun little scales or patterns or little melodies and kind of just let workshop those, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up that you kind of give yourself a little bit of a break from that. There's sometimes after performances, whether I go to live theater or whether I've been performing, and I get home and there's such a song in my heart that I just like scream at the top of my lungs something. And it's lovely to hear the house echo with music, but then there are absolutely times that I just go, I want the world to shut up. I don't want to hear anything from anybody. Turn off all the music, turn off the radio, and just drive home in complete dead silence. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And like honestly, more often than not, like that is usually after being in it all day, like that is more often than not actually where I actually end up, where I just want to enjoy not the information overload, and I want to just like enjoy actually the silence and just like, the sound of like just not even nature, but just of stillness, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like right now, if this is being picked up on my microphone, I'm sorry, but it is currently pouring outside right now,
Oh,
and it is one of the most relaxing things. Like if I could just have that constantly playing when I get home, the most beautiful music in the world is
Oh yeah.
yeah.
beautiful.
I can't hear it though.
Okay,
So,
good.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and like, I mean, one of my favorite things is I actually love going like doing big hikes like in the Rocky Mountains, like the 14ers, 13ers. And like when you're up on that high of altitude, like, most people will listen to their, you know, intense hiking jam music, whatever that sounds like. I don't even know what an intense hiking jam playlist sounds like, but whatever, people probably have that. But,
Yeah.
you know, one of my favorite things is like when you just get up there, just like turning off, like obviously your phone doesn't have service, just because of the altitude, but not even having the, you know, headphones in, because all you hear is the wind, if that, and you just hear it echoing
Yeah.
across the mountains, and it's one of the most beautiful, like, it's like so silent, but you hear everything. It's a weird like paradox kind of type of thing, but like that is so beautiful, and
Yeah.
that inspires me actually a lot. Like that is actually truly inspiring in a way.
Emily, I'm curious, what's something that's music to you that people may not always consider music?
Oh goodness. What a question. Well, I guess music as a metaphor. Verse, is that what you mean? Cuz like otherwise I've got a sunroof now and I can open it. And that means if I have the anything on the radio or streaming, I'll blast it these days cuz I can have the windows down cuz it's nice out. But to me, I guess as a music is what, like how you put it, I would maybe say like a photo shoot, or like sometimes the idea of movement in a piece of glass I created.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
I like
Like
that.
the clicks of the camera, or like the way that the glass gets formed together.
I don't consider the clicks of a camera musical. I imagine they are. They are erratic when I'm
See,
doing them.
well, no, like my brain right now is like going back to, I mean, you probably had the same class, Trey, where it's like, okay, your final paper is what is music, and you can't
Mm,
say it's, and this is like this very like, but the clicks of a camera can be music because someone probably
sure.
has actually turned them into a electronic backdrop for a, avant-garde, you know,
Yeah.
deconstructed piece that, they could pitch set all the different pitches of the clicks,
Right.
and how
Oh,
is that not
sure.
music now? So
Or it's a little percussion or something.
yeah, exactly. So at what point is music not music, and at what point is not music music?
Right.
Ooh, okay. I got no, I have so many flashbacks. I had a philosophy course back in high school that asked us that same question, and we were forced to define it. But that's probably a great conversation piece for maybe after the podcast. Um,
We'll have a whole separate show just for that.
right?
Yeah, we could get into that.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, one of the other things that I want to make sure that we talk about is that you are not only a performing artist for the saxophone, but you're also an advocate when it comes to both contemporary music and then one of your projects that you help run. But I don't want to give anything away. So, would you mind telling us about some of the advocacy that you do in addition to your performing?
Yeah. So I also I'm the founder of the I Exist project, that is an initiative that promotes queer narratives and diversity through contemporary music, specifically the stories and of really, composers, but also just queer history in itself, and kind of humanizing, just, and I want to say like humanizing and actually just making, talking about queer history, connotations, any of that, like a natural, normal uh, conversation point, and using music kind of as a vehicle through that to express different stories, um, with pretty much anyone around the world. And so that is something that I started probably 3.5, 4 years ago, basically out of a crazy idea on a Facebook post, and that it, basically I was doing a few what I would maybe call like queer activist pieces, like music pieces back to back. One of them was specifically the first one that actually kind of propelled the creation of the Axis project was Nathan Frobe's piece called Array, which kind of reverse engineered the colors of the progressive pride flag, in the sense where each color had its own music with it, but it wasn't necessarily on the color. It was more of the meaning behind each color on the flag. So
Hmm.
like red is life, orange healing, and so what does the music go with that?
Okay.
Um, and then using that as kind of a discussion point to actually talk about the history of, when we perform it in a concert, we don't just play the piece left to right and just, you know, move on to whatever the next piece is. We talk, it's almost a mini lecture in between each movement of the history of, why how the flag developed, what these colors means, where these colors, when they were added, what they represent, and like, current issues in the community. And
Hmm.
so a lot of the performances I do these days are actually almost exclusively with the I Exist project. And, obviously it being Pride Month and being the 50th celebration of Pride, that's actually what I'm doing a lot of. And, I think as far as music's performance gratification goes, I think that I couldn't ask for anything else, because there's just something magical and beautiful about it, because the amount of connection you get with people in the community, no matter what walk of life, you know, it's it's priceless. And obviously, yes, I mean, obviously, I identify as a queer male as well, and so it's just it takes self-expression to a completely different level that I never thought that I would actually get, that I would never actually do professionally, if that makes sense.
There was a college course that I took that focused on barber. Oh gosh, barber. Completely losing it.
I
Wrote
wanted
the
to say of Seville.
Funny. Bernstein, Aaron Copland, and we were going to get to Barber, but we only got to like one or two of his pieces. And
Okay.
it was the first time that when I took the course that we started learning a lot about their personal lives, and that their their orientation was not the focus of it. It just happened to be part of each of their journeys, and kind of how it influenced the presentation and development of their own music. And it became like I that was one of my favorite classes, not because it was made such a focal point, but it was because it was just presenting it as they were, not not such a hyperfixation on it. And that's what really stood out to me about that course. So Tony Bouchard, if you're listening to this, thank you so much. That class was incredible. So relating that back to the work that you're doing now and kind of having that conversation, um, yeah, that it means a lot to me as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's obviously, like, I bill it as a celebration of queer music, but I always start off every concert saying, look, like, consent is also a two-way street. Like, it's pretty clear what you're signing yourself up for when you walk in. Like, I haven't had any negative reactions to an actual performance yet. I mean, I'm sure one day I will. But you know, it's pretty clearly printed what you're about to get yourself into. And so obviously you are consenting to be here. But also, there are moments where there are trigger warnings because it gets real fast. And the history and yes, we want to celebrate everything there is, but there's a lot of history and there's a lot of um, just targeted violence, trauma, all the not so fun stuff that everyone doesn't talk about that needs to absolutely be highlighted or else it's going to continue. And so a lot of it is very hard conversations and just very heavy topics to cover, especially in the middle of a performance, because that's the last thing anyone thinks about. But that's also kind of the point. You know what I mean? And it really highlights just everything, like literally every aspect you can think of and then some. And that's kind of, I think that's just invaluable to the community. And, obviously I've been like, I have support from the community and different, afterwards, after concerts, that people are always like, that's the most, just emotionally vulnerable experience I've ever been through. And I would have never imagined that. And it's heartbreaking. And people are like, that's so beautiful. But I don't want to say it's beautiful because it's like tragically beautiful, if that makes sense.
Sometimes the hardest thing you can say is, or really just, just say is to ask a question, and it starts the conversation, regardless of where the conversation goes. If, as long as you're saying something and getting that dialogue going, that means so much to the education. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, it just starts with having an open and vulnerable space to have a conversation. And
Yeah.
that's, so like people ask like, okay, it's a concert, and they think it's like the Exist Project is just a concert series type that travels, but it's really not. It's more of yes, there's a concert component to it with the music, and the music is a vital part, but there is so much more of that so much more than that, where it's, I would say, if not more about, yes, the music is important, but it's also just as heavily important about the conversations and the advocacy and the actual education about history and current topics in queer culture.
I was actually listening to a piece of yours on your YouTube channel called White Socks, question mark, exclamation point. Reading the program notes from that, I won't spoil anything for anybody, but that reading that and listening to the music, I laughed out loud. So I think that's a good joy to go to your YouTube channel and find. So again, after this podcast ends, please go check out Nick's YouTube and check that out. But there's some really heartwarming pieces out there, and I'm really happy that you're presenting them out there for the community.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's, I mean, also it like, at the same time, like I also talk about, with the project, how when people try to do the, obviously it's Pride Month and people try and do the queer themed concerts and they end up doing, going back to Tchaikovsky's and all that stuff. Like if they do the Tchaikovsky violin concerto or something, that's great. That's wonderful. Like there's nothing wrong with it. But if they only play it just for the sake of program it just for the sake of it's Tchaikovsky and he was gay, then that kind of does disservice to Pride and just the queer community. I mean, because obviously, like I've done a lot of like starting this, I've learned so much more about like just queer history and even just like that queer history in music. But if you're going to program the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, for example, in Pride Month, present it and actually talk about the history of it, how Tchaikovsky and his best friend, who was also a male, went to the lake house in, Tsardom, Russia in the late 1800s for the summer. And, they were, we all have the letters. He was his good friend. We all know what that means. You don't have to hide it. We know what good friend means.
And they were roommates.
And they were roommates at the lake cabin for a whole summer. And he came back with a dedicated violin concerto. Can we just connect the dots and not, what I mean? Like, they were more than roommates.
I remember stories of Wagner too, hearing them, and wasn't he also gay, and that was kind of a thing that was hidden.
Truthfully, I don't remember.
Like they called him crazy, and they had separate staircases for things and whatever in his mansion in the Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany.
I'm going to research that after this, but honestly, that probably maps based off just everything I know. Like,
might be worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, it's one, even like going back to, like even jazz, like going back to jazz music. Like I just recently found out a few years ago after starting the project that Billy Strayhorn, who was the basically Duke Ellington's orchestrator, the most iconic early jazz artist bar none, if not the most influential one, his orchestrator, who basically Duke Ellington wrote the melodies and then Billy Strayhorn blew it up for the big band. So he wrote the actual version you hear on the radio and everything we know. He was not only homosexual, he was like in a high life New York society, like at like 1930s, 40s, because he was like one of the few actually accepted gay people at the time, because he was your Duke Ellington's writer. Sorry, we can't touch you. And he was like in high life cocktail parties and, all these upper Manhattan type soirees. And I'm sorry, like the fact that I, studied jazz and did almost a degree in jazz studies and never heard that made me angry.
I want to ask a question. So why, I don't know, I feel like that question is going to get a little too political, so I'm going to save it and let's maybe discuss it after the podcast. But it's a question I definitely want to get your thoughts on.
Okay.
Well, I am so happy. I wish that I still lived in Nebraska so that I could come to see it. And so I want to make sure that people who can attend these events can still go to see them. Do you live stream any of them by chance?
Some of them are live streamed. Otherwise, the best. I mean, it really just depends because, it's not. These performances aren't just in concert halls. They're in libraries. We'll do them in. We've done them in. Obviously the traditional concert hall libraries. basically like meeting rooms, for lack of a better, like just kind of like meeting convention spaces.
Mhm.
Like I've actually done them in, done a one or two in an actual bar. Like, so it's very not, what's the word I look for? It's not specific to, it has to be in this esteemed elite concert hall, with the biggest, baddest, you know, it can be outdoor in a park. Like you can still have these, I think it adds to the humanization of it, where you don't just go into this, beautiful concert hall and experience this. It can happen, one, the music can be created and heard anywhere, and it actually kind of fits anywhere depending on how you approach it. But also like the narratives, like it's not just here, it's everywhere. And so you can like, I'm totally fine doing a concert in a park or in a, a speakeasy or something like that, because to me, they're all emotionally the same.
Mhm. It's like an opera. Like you can perform anything anywhere, or perform a play. It doesn't have to be in a designated stage. It can be anywhere.
Exactly.
You can have a photo shoot in the middle of a field. You can have a photo shoot in your kitchen. You can be sewing no matter where it is, as long as you've got an outlet and a working sewing machine.
You
And
can hand sew.
you can
Yeah.
hand sew.
Yeah.
So
As long as you have a needle and thread, you can hand sew.
and a song in your heart. You can. Sorry. But the reality is, it challenges this idea that art has to exist in very defined spaces. It can exist anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing about you that we didn't talk about yet that I wanted to bring up is that you also collect pins.
Yes.
Oh boy, yes.
Tell me about this.
What part? I mean, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Well, like, are these pins like buttons or like enamel
Well, like
pins?
yeah, like
or...
enamel buttons. I mean,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, it really just started off as, so like, for how like a lot of musicians have like stickers on their cases.
Yeah.
So both my saxophone cases, for whatever reason, they've always been fabric,
Oh,
like fabric on the outside. So that means I can't put stickers on them because they won't stick.
right.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to start covering them in pins. And so I know far more than I thought I would ever know about like pin production, and just like the different, like, different materials they use for the epoxy and just that kind of stuff, and how they press them and how they replicate. It's a lot. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I started literally covering one of my cases, like the entire like opening facade of it, in just pins.
Cool.
If you get like 100 or so pins on a saxophone case, it actually starts to get kind of heavy, because like the
I
nice
was
ones are.
to ask that. Yeah.
So those came off, and so I just collect them and have a little board. But it's also I think it's just pins or stickers, whatever. Life's too short, and like put the stickers on your case or whatnot, because that is such same thing with like tattoos or anything, like just the form of self-expression that the little it sparks joy, and it sparks a little conversation. There's
Right.
nothing harmful, like they're fun and silly, and that's the point.
Yes. I do
yeah.
something similar, but with stickers.
Yeah.
I've had a few bands or a few people send me stickers,
Mhm.
and then I put them on my sewing machine case.
Yeah.
So if I'm traveling with my machine, it's plastered on my case.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. In fact, yeah, it's kind of become a thing now. I have all kinds of them on there, which is really
Yeah.
neat.
And
And I
like,
bet the bands
yeah.
have no idea. Like, why would I put that on my sewing machine case? But I don't own enough water bottles for all of these.
Yeah, and like I still keep, like, obviously I get stickers, and like those just go on my music stand, because why not?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, but it's it's just they're silly and they're fun, and you know what? Like, life's too short.
Yeah. Okay, so if we ever have a pin made for Modern Romantic, we'll have to send you one.
Absolutely.
Yes, excellent. Says the little pin gremlin over here.
I was wondering. Oh, go ahead, Trey. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just wondering, Nick, if you wore any of them, but I see now that you.
I don't wear. Well, I mean, so sometimes there's only one I sometimes wear, like as a lapel pin actually. So like
Okay.
I'll wear them sometimes if they're poignant, like on like an actual suit coat for like a performance.
Yeah.
But usually those are like the, how do I word it? They're fun and sassy, and you're not going to see it from 20. You're going to just see a little little shimmer from 20 feet away, 20, or whatever in a concert hall. But if you're 2 feet away, you're going to laugh and be like, oh, that makes sense.
Do you do that too, Trey?
No, but I am feeling inspired to do so. I'm actually thinking about one behind me. There are a couple pieces that I'd like to perform one day, and there's a set of 4 pins that are glow in the dark behind me, that are all like rabbit themed, that are just they'd be perfect for Halloween.
Yeah, and they're just whimsical, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's just the most random, but it sparks joy, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
I love that.
Exactly. Well, Nick, I've got to say, I love your approach to music. I love what you're doing in the community. I love what both the music and as well as the queer community, the advocacy that you're bringing, the performances that you're doing, and I feel like we could sit here for another 2 hours talking nothing but music. Um, I want to make sure that our listening audience, one, can stay up to date with you. So, would you mind sharing your socials that they can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so all of the, for whatever, miraculous miracle, all of the branding actually all worked out where I didn't have to change it for different platforms. So everything is Nick May Sax. That's the website, that's the Instagram, that's the Facebook. Technically, that's also the license plate, but you don't need to know that.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, no, I mean, oh, yep, you typed it. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nickmaysax.com, that's just my professional website where it has all the calendar with, usually it's up to date. I have to usually yell at my manager to update the website, and that's, hi, I'm the manager. That's me. So,
I
that's,
wondered if that was
again, going back to the 50,000 hats, like, that, just the never ending list of, things you have to do as a modern artist.
Yep.
But Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, that's really it, because I don't have TikTok, I don't have Twitter, I don't have any of those. So it's really just Instagram or Facebook, and that's it. Yeah.
And YouTube, don't forget YouTube.
Oh, and YouTube, yeah, I forgot about YouTube. Sorry, I forget about that too. But yeah, and that's where all of the, usually I post a lot, like just fun stories on Instagram. So that's usually, it's part serious, but also again, it's like Instagram. So it's like, why, life's too short. Like, it doesn't have to be serious all the time. So it'll be funny memes every now and then. It's a nice surprise of, you never know what you're going to get.
That's awesome.
And you can hear Nick playing, which is nice too, on both YouTube and Instagram.
Well, Nick, my last question for you, and this is a question we like to ask all of our guests because we never get the same answer twice.
Oh boy.
Has nothing to do with music and nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. If you could have lunch with anybody in the world, alive or dead, who would be sitting on the opposite side of the table from you?
Right now, I mean, and it's, if I could have lunch with anyone. Oh my God, that's. I would say Harvey Milk.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I have an idea why, but I'd like to hear from
I mean,
you.
there's a few. I mean, so obviously just the advocacy part of it, but also just to, whenever we talk about Harvey Milk, we always talk about like his, obviously his, his political career and all that, like the quote unquote fame side of that, and his advocacy of, what he did for queer rights and all that. And yes, that'd be amazing to talk about, but it'd just be curious to see what he was like outside of the political role, and just to see the human, like the humanization of that, for better or for worse. Because you know what I mean? Like, I think that would just be really interesting just to see that and see how, he became motivated by what he became, if that makes sense. Motivated to become what he became.
Absolutely makes sense. That's a great answer. Wow. Sorry, I keep looking at Emily because I feel like she's wanting to ask a question, and I keep asking
no,
questions.
no, please do. No, I'm just listening. My right eye has an itch in it, and it's been watering like the whole show. So I've been trying to make it not look like I'm crying.
It's
So
fine.
yeah, if you see me doing this, it's because my eye is watering. No, I was just thinking about how that is true of many people. I think I see in the spotlight that I want to see like the human behind
Like the
what we see.
yeah, like the casual, and even the rough, uncut. You know, like what are the actual rough like sides of it? You know what I mean? Like not the not the Marilyn Monroe. You know, everything Hollywood, but like, you know, what's
Right.
Yeah,
What's the unpolished side look like?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that is a little bit of the motivation to the show too, just because I feel like we strive for some authenticity and being kind of raw here. So we ask, I don't know if we always ask the tough questions, but you know, I like to get to know that as well.
Yeah.
It tells us a little deeper. And I think that's more inspiring to an audience and just to us too. Like, that keeps me going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, authenticity is something that's really undervalued in a very, I don't know, I think like even in just any of the artistic mediums, it's not something that people talk about enough because I feel like there's always like the pressure to be, you know, this on point media branding, whatever you want to,
Yeah.
you know, whatever expectations we've set or have been set. There's rarely ever time for people to be out. I feel rarely people are authentically, you know, either being themselves or just doing what they want to authentically. And it's even how they present their art. Is it being presented in an authentic fashion, or is it just, you know, I just don't think there's enough of that out there.
I would agree. Dang. Okay, can we just get a book of quotes from Nick, please?
Yeah. You can just
a book of quotes.
we'll
That's all we
clip
need.
this too. I'll clip that too for you, Nick.
Okay.
I do expect royalties for anything that you use. Please and thank you.
Royalties.
Royalties. That's a new one. Yeah.
Well, Nick, I really got to thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. Thank you for sharing your art and your thoughts with us. You have been a fantastic guest.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Like, this has been such a wonderful treat and an amazing, like, it's been amazing, an amazing Monday. So I love it. And you two are amazing
Hooray.
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a joy to have you on the show.
As we close this episode out, we want to thank you so much for tuning in wherever you are listening to us for behind the scenes conversations and other videos that you won't see anywhere else. You can find us on Patreon, The Mod Rom, or you can check out our website, themodrom.com, for past episodes. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye.
Bye. Oops, I hit cancel on ending the show.